My name is David Ackerley, the current Dean of the College of Natural Resources as of just about a year ago. I am incredibly pleased to welcome this distinguished, remarkable crowd, so many people with so many different affiliations to the college, and of course to our guest of honor, Dr. Gordon Rausser. I want to give first, before we do anything else, I would like to actually give a special welcome and another round of applause, both for today's speakers and advance for tomorrow's. So thank you for everyone who came to participate in the event. I also want to extend a very special welcome to members of Gordon's family who are here today, and it's a pleasure to be hosting you all here on campus. I'm sure you've been frequent visitors over the years. And without further ado, I want to pass the microphone to our esteemed and wonderful Chancellor, Carol Christ. Thank you all so much.
It's such a pleasure to pay tribute to Gordon today with his colleagues, family, and friends. Gordon was Dean of the College of Natural Resources during the same years in the 1990s when I was Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost. We began and ended our terms at the same time. Those were tumultuous years for CNR. The reorganization of biology was still fairly new, and it did not feel completely settled, particularly in the new department of ESPN. The university was under a great deal of budgetary pressure, and the Division of Agricultural and Natural Resources at the Office of the President wanted to consolidate agricultural programs at the Davis and Riverside campuses, removing Berkeley's designation as one of its 3 principal sites, a decision that would have had major budgetary consequences for the college. And the college, like the whole campus, was struggling with budgetary reductions. Gordon was the ideal dean in these circumstances. Many of you may know that Gordon is a boxer, something that I did not know, to my misfortune. We were holding a press conference to announce CNR's partnership with Novartis, one of the boldest and most creative of Gordon's accomplishments as dean. It was a controversial agreement, both on campus and off. An activist group called the Biotic Baking Brigade, with the slogan, "The Pie's the Limit," came to the press conference with the intention of throwing a pie at Gordon. In true boxer fashion, he ducked and weaved, and I, who was walking behind him, got hit. They told me it was organic and I shouldn't worry. The incident suggests how agile and how wily Gordon can be. Gordon's pugnaciousness, his standing his ground, his strength of commitment and character were essential in those years for CNR. A less determined or decisive person might have left the college founder or drift, but Gordon saw in the extraordinary challenges of the time opportunities for innovation. He was the first to grasp how transformational public-private partnerships could be for Berkeley, and even when faced with strong opposition from parts of his own faculty, from the academic senate, he stayed the course. At Gordon's retirement party as dean, I talked about the philosopher Isaiah Berlin's essay about the hedgehog and the fox. The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. It's a kind of academic party game deciding who's a hedgehog and who's a fox. Dostoevsky is a hedgehog. Tolstoy is a fox. Bernie Sanders is a hedgehog. Nancy Pelosi is a fox. Well, Gordon is a bit of both. Gordon has an extraordinary variety of innovative ideas. He knows many tricks. He's brilliant, witty, relentlessly creative. But the word relentlessly suggests that part of him that's like a hedgehog. In all his dodging and weaving, he doesn't give up. In fact, one of his favorite moves is referring back to first principles. One of those first principles is excellence, and another is his passionate commitment to the College of Natural Resources and its mission. Gordon, we thank you for both the fox and the hedgehog in your character and work, for your extraordinary leadership, your academic accomplishments, your relentless energy in mind and spirit, your humor, and your unwavering commitment to excellence in everything that you've done. As many of you know, Gordon is devoted to his family, his 3 children, and his 9 grandchildren, and a great-grandchild on the way. He's no less devoted to the intellectual families he has germinated over the years. This conference and the Festschrift that will come from it is very much a tribute not only to Gordon's own research and scholarship, but to the many communities that he has fostered at the university, in his public policy career, and in his entrepreneurial activity. There's a concept in genre in English literature of pastoral. Many poems think that this a genre means poems idealizing rural life. I don't think Gordon would write poems idealizing rural life. However, scholars have corrected this concept of pastoral, and now they think of pastoral as about convening, using rural life as the occasion and the metaphor for conversation and for convening. So I'd like to thank all these communities convening today, represented here today, former students, friends, colleagues, and family, for participating in this pastoral convening and helping us to honor Gordon. Gordon and I shared a mentor in Rod Park. I'm going to close my remarks today by reading the final paragraph of one of Rod's favorite books, classicist F.M. Cornford's 1908 satire about academic politics, Microcosmographia Academica. Cornford is inviting the young academic politician to leave what he calls the King's Parade, that's the world of academic politics, to return to, and here I'm quoting Cornford, the silent, reasonable world where the only action is thought, and thought is free from fear. If you go back to it now, keeping just enough bitterness to put a pleasant edge on your conversation, and just enough worldly wisdom to save other people's toes, you will find yourself in the best of all company, the company of clean, humorous intellect. And if you have a spark of imagination and try very hard to remember what it was like to be young, there is no reason why your brains should ever get woolly or anyone should wish you out of the way. And so now, if I had a glass, I'd give a toast to Gordon. But I'd like to give him a memory book created from the comments sent in from former students, colleagues, and friends.
Thank you very much, Carol. I am pleased to introduce next Dean Emeritus of the College of Natural Resources, Keith Gilles. Keith is a professor both in the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics, as well as Environmental Science, Policy, and Management. He held the post for 11 years and is now enjoying the life of a professor again. He's also the chair of our Board of Forestry for the state of California and one of the key players managing one of the most important public-private partnerships right now, which is that PG&E tries to keep our lights on for our public university. But hopefully that was a topic for another day. Keith, welcome to the stage.
So I'm trying not to duplicate some of the things that Carol said, which was a really good testament to the importance Gordon had to the campus. But as Brian Wright said earlier today, basically the Agriculture and Resource Economics Department here, despite its storied history at the time Gordon was brought in to be a turnaround artist, was underperforming, and he laid the groundwork for its resurgence to the point where in the last National Research Council rankings of programs, there's only one program in any field in the country whose 95% confidence interval around their ranking included only number one. He did a pretty good job. At a crisis point for CNR, Gordon was brought in to do another turnaround. And I think the situation was actually even more dire than Carol has let on, but I'm blunter than Carol. We'd had our academic plan rejected by a provost from our own college, no less. We were in a hiring freeze such that as we were thinking about reorganizing and putting out a new academic plan, the youngest faculty member in the college was 30, as I was chair of the executive committee. We had failed to completely engage with the biology reorganization to our detriment. The college had only 500 or 600 undergraduates majoring in the college. Gordon inherited a stalled internal reorganization. We pretty much knew what we needed to do, but we needed Gordon to come in and get us over the finish line. There was this existential threat to our role as a land-grant university, where people with less imagination than Gordon were looking at budget cuts and loss in personnel in the ag world and saying, by God, we need to change the slices of the pie. You know, Gordon was always the kind of person that said, no, the problem is the size of the pie. Could we stop fighting over scraps? And so, you know, Gordon brought that to the fight. The college was, in fact, badly administered, that authority over resources was so diffuse that it was essentially impossible to launch any kind of a major initiative or actually manage the college efficiently. So what did he proceed to do? He used this concept of excellence to push forward a plan, gain the acceptance of the faculty. You know, and universities are the most change-averse institutions imaginable. Gordon got the buy-in to move forward. He got us hiring faculty again that set the basis for us moving into having the college regarded as the people that set the mark for excellence in fields as diverse as plant biology or ecology and evolutionary biology or agricultural and resource economics. He showed the nation at a point when all land-grant universities and colleges of agriculture, I think, were struggling, that you could, in fact, change in a way that both respected tradition, had the right balance between applied and discovery science to merit your existence on a campus like the Berkeley campus and be relevant and valued by those campuses. He restructured the financial management, and what a lot of the faculty out there don't know is I would have never been able to get us through the 2009 period had Gordon not restructured the way in which the college manages its finances. I would have been without the tools to keep the wheels on the bus that got us through those really dark years. And Gordon also, while he was doing all that, he left behind the seeds. He started us down the path to public-private partnerships with the Novartis deal. He started us down the path towards professional education. The Master of Development Practice degree we have now, and whatever we do in the future on this, that really started with Gordon saying, we are not fulfilling this part of our mission, let's go out and figure out how to do it. He started us down the path to having 2,000 undergraduates and actually teaching at the kinds of norms that are really like our peers and other units on the campus. He started really fundraising in the modern world that is so essential to the future of higher education. And I'm just going to close by saying, if it weren't for the vision, the political acumen, and the bias for action that Gordon demonstrated throughout his period of leading the college, I don't believe there would be a College of Natural Resources for David to be the dean of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. It is my great pleasure to welcome Gilles Mccluskey, Gilles is a distinguished student of Gordon's, and I can only imagine I would get in trouble if I tried to say where she was in the ranking of those distinguished students in this crowd. Gilles is a distinguished professor of sustainability and a Regents professor at Washington State University in the School of Economic Sciences, where she directs the school. She received her PhD and master's in agricultural and resource economics from CNR at UC Berkeley's College of Natural Resources. She also has an MA from Georgetown University and a BA from UC Santa Barbara, and as we said, is a former student of Gordon's. Welcome, Gilles.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here to celebrate Gordon's storied career. This is a homecoming for me. All of the professors and my classmates always treated me like family, especially Gordon. So Gordon was my PhD advisor from 1994 to 98, and he also happened to be the Dean of the College of Natural Resources and also a highly successful consultant. People speculated that he didn't sleep. I would meet with him every other week to discuss my research, and one might think that since Gordon was so busy, I could fly under the radar, but that was not the case. If there were any parts of my papers that I was less confident about, Gordon would always zero in on it and make me defend it or make me revise it. Gordon always liked to be the best at whatever job he took. As dean, he talked with me about his public-private research partnership with Novartis that we've been talking about, which enabled the College of Natural Resources to grow during challenging budget times. He was a pioneer in building university-industry partnerships, and he thought carefully about control of the research agenda. Gordon has never been one to back down from a disagreement. He enjoyed the competitive aspect of arguing, and he had some famous academic battles, which maybe some of you were involved in. This likely served him well as a top expert in legal cases. At the same time, Gordon was open to new ideas, especially ones that changed his mind. Some other celebrated scholars will often jump out ahead to your conclusions before you get there, and they might be wrong. Gordon never did that. He always heard everyone, including me, with an open mind. Gordon worked in many different areas, including high-level university administration, government service on the Council of Economic Advisors, and the Agency for International Development, industry, and the best job in the world, being a university professor. He also grew up on a farm, and I am confident that this breadth gave him insights into problems in which people with a more narrow focus would miss. So I would say he is a fox, but he's an overachieving fox, to go with your analogy, Carol. So Gordon's major academic contributions began with his efforts to reform public policy as it relates to resources, agriculture, prices, and distortions that exist in commodity markets. He then wanted to understand the nature of political economy that makes our political leaders adopt certain policies and their consequences. He engaged in university leadership, and he made contributions into valuing research and the incentives of these partnerships. Gordon was never one to waste time. When Gordon was a young professor at UC Davis, he famously would sometimes write on the chalkboard with both hands simultaneously in order to be more efficient. Can you imagine taking a class from a young Gordon Rausser? I'm sure it was like drinking from a fire hose. A similar story is that Gordon would say to his PhD students, "Walk with me," in his office when he was dean. And then you would scurry down the hall to the men's room, and Gordon would discuss the paper while using the facilities. Rachel Goodhue and I did follow him to the restroom, but we never went in. And we used to joke that we were both at a distinct disadvantage because all the important meetings went on in the men's restroom. He would always say, "I discussed with so-and-so in the restroom," and that I just had to laugh today when Brian Wright said that Gordon met him in the restroom and tried to recruit him from Yale to come to Berkeley. So joking aside, his doctoral students were fortunate to receive the gift of his mentoring. Although I was a graduate student being mentored by an eminent scholar and the dean at UC Berkeley, Gordon always made me feel like a colleague. To him, ideas mattered more than the position. The merit of an idea or argument was more important than who was making it. It didn't matter that I was female or that I was a student. In fact, I thought about this, that I didn't even realize that women were underrepresented until I started my faculty job, because at Berkeley, I always felt like that was not an issue. He believed in me and pushed me to produce excellence. I endeavor to do the same with my own doctoral students. His students, his co-authors, faculty, business partners, and policymakers were also fortunate to cross paths with Gordon. His impact is great and long-lasting, and we think differently about so many things due to his influence on our career. I just want to say thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, Jill. It's my pleasure to welcome David Just to the stage. David is the Susan Eckert Lynch Professor of Science and Business in the Charles Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management at Cornell University. David is also an alumnus of our Agricultural and Resource Economics Department in CNR, earning both a master's and a PhD. David's father, Richard, is a longtime friend and colleague of Gordon. Richard is Distinguished University Professor Emeritus from the University of Maryland and is also an alumnus of our Agricultural and Resource Economics program. And David is here to share a poem Richard Just wrote for this occasion.
My father really sincerely wanted to be here today. There are a couple of things that got in the way. He first had a minor health scare that turned out to be nothing, but then his mother-in-law passed away. And, well, keeping the family happy required him to be elsewhere. But I'm going to read this poem, and this poem is sincere. And it truly expresses how my father felt about Gordon when he wrote it and how he still feels about him. Growing up in an academic household, I would very often hear my father needle and ridicule basically all professors he interacted with. But there were just a few who he would speak about their contributions and collaborations with some reverence and respect that was palpable, that you could recognize, and Gordon was probably chief among those. The second thing I want to say, though, is I take no responsibility for my father's use of meter or rhymes. This is entitled Gordon C. Rausser. As a colleague, Gordon is the fiercest competitor. Always to be the best, he is driven like a predator. Yet as a competitor, he is the most supportive colleague, always ready to work together, never dampened by fatigue. If he starts a consulting company, it must be the biggest. If he founds a trading fund, it must grow the fastest. If he chairs a department, it must be the world's best. If the dean of a college, it must show where the future will rest. If he joins a government agency, he must be the chief, always moving forward with vigor and without relief. Even with grandchildren, he must have the most. Oh well, there's one thing he cannot boast. Giving more time in a day and more days at a time, he has come to be one of the profession's prime. He has achieved all of these goals and more. One can only imagine what the future has in store. While this person's achievements are many, his most unique characteristic, beyond any, is his infectious charisma and that energizes all, which expands vision and makes goals tall. Through his ideas and visions, he does conceive, he has inspired many around him to believe that they can join and contribute with him to making something the best that there has ever been. Thank you, Gordon, on behalf of my father and on my behalf.
Thank you, David. Before I pass the podium to our final speaker and distinguished and honored the distinguished feature of today's program, I want to share 3 words and a comment on each. The first is as a personal sense of gratitude is the word trust and to be entrusted. And I want to thank my predecessors, the faculty, and the university leadership for the entrusting the current phase of the College of Natural Resources and know how seriously and how deeply I take that responsibility and what a pleasure it has been in this first year. The second is reflecting on the meaning of legacy and history. I love reading history and I like to understand our history. And while we look ahead to the future, it matters a lot to know where we came from. And that starts from our origins in the land-grant system, our origins as a public university, and everything that has shaped the College of Natural Resources and UC Berkeley today. And there's no more important figure at this moment about the current status, the person who shaped the legacy of the college, than Gordon's role. And as we look ahead to the future, there are two guiding principles. One is the true meaning of excellence, what it means to strive for that. Only through eternal vigilance in a university do we pursue that goal, because it is always slipping away and it is always something we're striving for and we can never work hard enough at it. And the other is to honor deeply, deeply honor what it means to be a public university in the United States of America and in the state of California in this day. And those are the guiding principles that I have learned here at Berkeley, learned from those who've come before me, and I want to thank all of you here who have shaped our thinking on that. And with those words, I want to pass the podium to Professor Emeritus of Agricultural and Resource Economics, Dean Emeritus of the College of Natural Resources, Gordon Rausser.
Okay, thank you all for coming out for this fest trip. I know you all have very busy schedules, and I really appreciate particularly Bill Foster, one of my most cherished PhD students, coming all the way from Chile. Given the chaos that's going on there, I'm sure you're delighted to be out. In any event, we've had much discussion today about the role of institutions in sound governance. I've done a lot of work in this area, and it continues to excite me. But along with me, we were all brought here today because of Cal Berkeley. It's indeed an extraordinary institution with a well-articulated shared governance structure. Let's reflect for a moment on the following proposition. Have the citizens of the state of California created an institution that's had a greater impact on our past, or which has a greater power to shape our future? From its formation in 1868, Cal Berkeley continues in subtle and often overlooked ways to pour fresh knowledge, human capital, and innovation into the engines of our society. As an institution, Cal Berkeley demands excellence and has little patience for mediocrity. It heralds the latest and the newest, but never allows itself to be consumed by the intellectual fad of the day. It is a body, an institution that thinks both before and beyond its time. We, those of us who are members of the College of Natural Resources, take great pride in the fact that our college is one of the two cornerstones of this remarkable institution. For me as an individual, UC Berkeley and CNR, UC Berkeley principally, has provided an intellectual home. It's always been home for the last 40 years. It's more congenial than I could have possibly imagined or deserved. I grew up on a dairy farm, milking cows at 10 years old, getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning. The nearest town was 7 miles away, and there were only 300 people in that town. When I first arrived as a graduate student at UC Davis, I happened to come in my first year to UC Berkeley. I was simply awestruck. I visited the Berkeley campus, reviewing the materials in the Giannini Foundation Library, the richest library in the world in agricultural economics. Walking across the campus via Sather Gate, followed by a hike up Strawberry Canyon. I thought I'd died and arrived in heaven. At least I didn't have to milk those damn cows anymore. I was sure of that. It's been a place of challenge where the seemingly impossible somehow becomes doable. And that's something that's driven the major contributors to science on this particular campus. Once again, I want to thank you for sharing the evening with me and my family at tonight's reception. the 2 days of discussions here at UC Berkeley for those who have traveled long distances to review the contributions that various people have made related to my major research interest over the course of my career. And I look forward to the 2 days, I was looking forward to 2 days at the ranch where we were going to have a number of chapters prepared for a book, Essays in Honor of. And now we're informed that there's no power there. But I do actually have a substitute for that power, but all of my colleagues are now telling me, what about the Wi-Fi? I need my slide decks. I can't speak before a group without my slide deck. In any event, I want to thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it very much.